I'm what the deaf, nonverbal audio classify as hard hearing, HH. Because I can communicate with hearing person without resorting sign languages or notes. I met my boyfriend, Alan, who is deaf about a year ago. I was the only person he could communicate at work with ASL, even though I only could sign basic words. Later, he began to teach me in more advanced ASL, and we found out we have so much in common in TV, movies, books, tastes with similar goals and desires in life that we became best friends that evolved into a romantic relationship. We're going strong 9 months now, and we're compatible in every area. It's the best and healthiest relationship I ever had, and I'm always excited and giddy to see him at work or when we wake up together. He feels the same, and we're talking moving each other as soon his lease is up in 3 months from now. 2 months ago, we decided to meet each other parents, which all are hearing. He's their only deaf son. Alan met mine, and it went fabulous. Then we met his parents, Irma and Paul. I thought we got along because they were smiling, gushing and laughing, but I'm beginning to believe they were putting their best masks for the sake of their son. One time on a family's birthday parties, Irma said in front of the ladies with me next to her, "It's so impressive you can talk with that speech impediment. I barely can understand you myself." She said as jokingly manner, but no one laughed. Everyone glanced at each other awkwardly, and I just stared at her. Then excused myself. At first I wasn't sure if she meant as generational ignorant way like, who's the woman in the relationship? To the gays. I didn't mention to my boyfriend because I was hoping it was only time remark. It wasn't. They made more comments, mostly Irma, about me struggling pronunciation or grammars, using sign language incorrectly and not teaching me the right one like Alan would do, or not having deaf//HH friends, or not going more to deaf community, and so on. It happened so gradual and subtle that I didn't realize they were being insulting to my face that to this day I still wonder. Most of the time they would make those comments without Alan nearby. I mentioned to Alan few times, and he told me that maybe they were worried I might not understand the deaf culture. He talked to them that saying those things weren't helpful and he would appreciate if they would shut it up. They didn't. Few weeks ago at barbecue party, Irma and Paul sort of insinuated about my parent for not giving best tool for me, saying it was a shame that my parent didn't put me in deaf school or letting me to get cochlea implant or letting me to study abroad in non-deaf university program. They made it sound as if my parent crippled me as person because my social and emotional network didn't consist the right people. This time I got angry and I said what they said was rude. That my parents made lot sacrifice for me and no one has the right to belittle for their choices about raising me. Alan caught at the end of the conversation, lip reading, and asked me what's going on. Not so surprisingly, Alan's parent threw me under the bus, remarking I was so sensitive after making such innocuous comment. Alan saw I was uncomfortable and asked me if I want to leave. I said yes, and we left. When we got home he asked me what they said to me. I didn't want to say what his parent told me because it was so ugly to talk about it, but I told him anyway, and he got upset for me. He FaceTimed them and said they shouldn't said that. He told them they crossed the line. They pretended they didn't know what I was talking about, that perhaps I misunderstood, considering I'm hard-hearing, which upset Alan even more. They ended arguing for a few minutes before Alan hung up. Since then, Alan has become desolate and needy. He apologized to me hundreds of times for not believing me what I said before. I told them that he has nothing to apologize because I wasn't sure if they were being snide toward me until now, and I'm not going to blame Alan for what his parents said to me. He told me he's thinking reducing contact with them, but I told Alan it wasn't necessary. He can do whatever he wants with his parent, but that I rather would not go to any of his family gathering or go his parents. He assured he would never force me or put me in that situation ever again. We're closer together than we were, but he's still sad and he no longer goes to his family gatherings or his parents. I find him staring at nothing in particular for long minutes, and his eyes, which used to sparkle, are now dim. I want to cheer him up, but I'm not so sure how to in first place. I just don't know what to do, and I don't understand why his parents are so rude toward me because I'm not completely deaf considering they aren't one. So me and my husband, who I'll call Jake for this story, have been together for 5 years and married for 3. We have recently started trying for a baby as we both felt like that was the next step in our life together. And 3 weeks ago I got a positive test back. We were really happy and told our families, and now my mom and mother-in-law want to throw a big baby shower for us. It was just super good news all around. Well, 2 nights ago me and Jake were getting ready for bed when he reminds me to go through the house and make sure all the lights are off. Now he can be a little lazy at times. And it has become a nightly routine for me to make sure all the lights are off that he leaves on before we go to bed. I wasn't feeling very well and asked if he could just do it since he wasn't doing anything and was literally standing by the door. He then tells me, "No, this is what is expected of you every night." I was a little hurt, but I didn't want to fight with him, so I just did it. When I came back, Jake goes on this very long and unprovoked rant saying things like, "Just because you are pregnant does not mean anything will change, and you are still expected to cook, clean, and do all the chores every day because how can you be expected to be a mother if you can't handle a little work?" He wasn't yelling or anything, he was talking to me quietly like I was 2 inches tall. I was shocked because I had never heard him say anything like this. The rant went on for about 30 minutes before I interjected and asked, "Well, what do you plan on doing to help me with all of this?" He then got extremely defensive, saying he works his ass off at his job to provide for me and what is going to be our future children. For context, I don't work ATM, my job was not paying enough to justify me going, so I am a full-time college student. He ended by saying that it doesn't matter how I feel physically or mentally, it is a mother's job to push through. And if he helped and babied me, I wouldn't be a good mother. I got extremely upset and started yelling, and I said that, "I wish I would have known this is how you felt before I got pregnant with your baby." There was a moment of silence before he started crying, and he left for the night to stay at his mother's house. He hasn't been back yet, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have called me berating me and saying I broke Jake's heart with what I said, and I need to apologize immediately, and until I do he isn't coming home. I don't know how to feel. So for yelling at my husband after he said he isn't helping me with anything during the pregnancy because it's a mother's job to deal with it? Okay. I am getting some things together and am going to be headed to my mom and dad's house. My mom is furious with him and doesn't want me apologizing to him or talking to him without the situation either being recorded or having a witness. I am a 19-year-old man. On Thursday, a person I had a major crush on in high school, but who rejected me, messaged me out of the blue. She had never contacted me without my contacting her first. And at one point I realized she had had me blocked on social media, and so I found it odd that she was suddenly being friendly. After sending a couple of greetings / questions about how I've been, she said that she was going to have some people over and wanted to know if I would get the beer. The drinking age where we are is 19, and she and the people who were going to chill were all 18. The liquor stores in my area all card. I thought it was silly that my being a month older meant I could buy liquor and they couldn't, and so I said I would love to go. She said, "Thanks, I'll pick you up at 7. 7 o'clock rolled around, and she texted me to say she was in front of my house. I went out dressed and ready to chill with some people, and she drove me to the liquor store. When we got there, I asked what beer she wanted me to get, and she told me to get Budweiser. I hid my disappointment as well as I could, but it was her party, so I went in and bought 2 cases of 24. I got back in the car and said, "Let's party," and she was eerily quiet. I noticed that she wasn't driving towards her neighborhood, but rather back towards mine. I thought she had moved or something, but didn't want to press the issue. When she turned down my street, I finally figured it out. She was being purposefully vague about the invitation because she wanted me to get the beer. But she wanted a way out when she told me I wasn't actually invited in the first place. She stopped in front of my house, leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Thanks," in her best voice. I deadpanned her and asked when she was going to tell me I wasn't invited. She feigned surprise and said that she never intended to invite me in the first place. I sat in silence for a long, awkward minute, picked up the beer, and walked towards my front door. She got out of her car and frantically tried to re-invite me to the party. But I told her that what she did was the most humiliating thing that ever happened to me. I opened my front door, slammed it a bit too hard, and came back to my room. My daughter is 16 years old and in high school. I noticed recently that she's been behaving in a bad manner, constantly commenting on other people's looks, belongings, calling them stuff that isn't cool, and just being insensitive. It's like she lost a filter or something because usually she's polite, but my wife suspected that our daughter's sudden misbehavior occurred after she started hanging out with new girls from the school. Basically the mean type, and have picked on their behavior. I've sat with my daughter and had many discussions about how her behavior has been negatively affecting everyone around her. Our housemaid is the person most affected here, and my daughter has chosen her to be her target for hair, clothes, etiquette, criticism. She has complained about our daughter calling her offensive names like filthy and gross for cleaning certain areas in our house. I took a stand and explicitly told my daughter I'd punish her if she ever said stuff like that to our housemaid again. Last week my daughter had a party to go to. Earlier that day she called our housemaid filthy. So I grounded her by not letting her go to the party. She threw a fit and called our housemaid a liar, saying she never called her that. That was the end of it. Days later my daughter came to me saying she couldn't find her iPhone after looking everywhere. She asked me to call her number and I did. My wife and I were stunned to discover that the iPhone was ringing inside our housemaid's bag. I had in confrontation with her immediately, and she denied and cried, saying she never touched the phone nor had any idea how it got there. I noticed my daughter calling her thief repeatedly, so I told her to stop and go to her room. I checked the indoor camera before continuing the argument and saw my daughter place her iPhone inside our housemaid's bag. I was livid. I apologized to the housemaid and gave her the rest of the day off. I then showed the video to my daughter and she was absolutely speechless. I said what she did was immoral and straight up offensive to tamper with that poor woman's livelihood over a petty party she couldn't go to. I told her she was grounded and will have to spend the night in the backyard. She is a germaphobe. But she cried, begging me to not make her sleep with the dirt, insects, and hot temp. I refused to discuss it or I'd make it 2 nights. My wife said I should go easy on her, but I said calling people filthy and accusing them of stealing wasn't okay. In fact, it was the absolute worst. I then went through with my punishment. The reason I chose this punishment was because of the fact that my daughter says she is a germaphobe and used this as excuse to insult others' hygiene and appearance. Our backyard has dirt and bugs in it, and this kind of things get her uncomfortable, but other than that the backyard is 100% safe.